For 6 months, Franklin Cross brought breakfast to Hazel Moore every single morning. A peanut butter sandwich, a banana, hot coffee in a thermos. 6:15 a.m., without fail, at the same spot outside the shuttered laundromat where she slept. Before we rewind and tell you how Franklin and Hazel's routine even started, hit like and subscribe if you enjoy emotional stories where kindness collides with power. Because the reason that Billionaire showed up is darker than you think. He was 12, black, wearing a worn janitor uniform to help his grandmother keep the lights on. She was 71, white, homeless, telling stories nobody believed. Then one morning, everything changed. A black luxury car pulled onto their block at dawn. Security personnel spread out along the sidewalk, scanning the area like they owned it. Donald Turner, billionaire, property developer, the man who made entire neighborhoods disappear, stepped out onto the cracked pavement. When Franklin arrived with the paper bag and thermos, still in his janitor uniform from his early morning shift, his heart dropped. The street went completely silent. "Mr. Cross," Donald Turner said, his expensive shoes gleaming against the dirty curb. "We're here about Hazel Moore." Hazel, the old lady from the bus stop. Franklin's voice shook. Did something happen to her? Turner's expression was cold, calculated. "Son, we need to talk about what you've been doing for her." Franklin's hands tightened around the thermos. Hazel sat motionless on her cardboard, her face pale, her hands trembling in her lap. She looked up at Franklin once, her eyes filled with something he'd never seen before. Fear. And in that moment, Franklin understood. This wasn't about kindness anymore. This was about something Hazel had been trying to warn him about for months. "The door," she whispered, so quietly only Franklin could hear. "The truth." Turner's smile was thin, dangerous. "Why don't we all step inside and have a conversation?" Franklin didn't move. Because 6 months ago, when he'd first offered Hazel a sandwich, he'd made a choice to see her when no one else would. And now that choice had consequences. 6 months earlier, Franklin had noticed Hazel for the first time on a cold March morning. He took the number 47 bus every day at 6:30, the same route that took him from his grandmother's apartment to the community center where he cleaned floors before school. The bus stop was 3 blocks away, right outside a laundromat that had been boarded up for years. That's where Hazel slept, on flattened cardboard, a faded red jacket pulled tight around her shoulders, her belongings stuffed into a black trash bag beside her. Most people walked past without looking. Some crossed the street to avoid her entirely. Franklin had done the same thing for 2 weeks, telling himself he didn't have enough to help. He barely had enough for himself. But one morning, he'd packed an extra sandwich for lunch and realized he wouldn't have time to eat it. His shift at the community center ran until 7:45, then he had to get to school by 8:15. The sandwich would just go bad in his locker. Hazel was awake when he approached, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion written across her face. She watched him carefully, like she was used to people either ignoring her or yelling at her to move along. "Excuse me," Franklin said, holding out the wrapped sandwich. "I made too much. You want this?" She stared at the sandwich, then at his face. For a long moment, she didn't move. "You need that more than I do," she said quietly. "That's debatable," Franklin replied. "But I'm offering." She took it with both hands, like it was something precious. "Thank you," she said. Her voice carried dignity, not desperation. "Franklin," he said. "Franklin Cross. Hazel Moore." He almost walked away then. Almost went back to his routine of not seeing her, not getting involved. But something about the way she'd said thank you, with respect, not relief, made him pause. "Do you take your coffee black or with sugar?" he asked. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Black's fine." The next morning, Franklin brought coffee in a thermos and a banana. The morning after that, another sandwich and an apple. By the end of the first week, it had become a routine he couldn't imagine breaking. Franklin's mornings started at 5:30 a.m. He'd work a quick shift mopping floors at the community center, pocket $12, then grab bread and peanut butter from the corner store before heading to Hazel's spot. She was always there. Same curb, same faded red jacket, Same tired posture. But her eyes stayed sharp, watching everything. Their conversations became a rhythm. Franklin never pitted. Hazel never begged. He'd ask about her night. She'd ask about his grandmother. They talked like neighbors, not charity cases. The neighborhood ignored her. Some mocked her openly. One morning, a store owner kicked her blanket into the street. Franklin stopped walking. Leave her alone. The man scoffed, but backed off. Hazel watched Franklin carefully after that. Then the fragments started. I had a house once, she'd murmur. Lost the key. Lost the name attached to it. Franklin assumed it was confusion, age, grief. But he remembered every detail. One morning, Hazel gripped his wrist. When the expensive shoes come, don't be afraid. Quick question. Would you keep helping someone every day if it started costing you your own comfort? Type yes or no in the comments, because Hazel's next words change everything. Hazel's stories grew more specific. There was a photo, she'd say. Blue door. Brass number 7. I kept it in a frame. Franklin noticed patterns. She mentioned the same address fragment, 1847 Ashland, 3 times. The same year, 2018. And always, she'd start to say a name, then stop. Turner, then silence. One morning, a construction truck rolled past. Turner Development, painted on the side. Hazel's face went white. She turned away, trembling. That night, Franklin overheard his grandmother talking to a neighbor. Donald Turner's buying up the whole east side. Folks disappearing from their homes overnight. Franklin remembered Hazel's fragments. The address, the year, the name. The next morning, Hazel gripped his arm. If anyone asks about me, tell them I'm nobody. Why would? Just promise. Franklin nodded slowly. People didn't warn you like that unless they were afraid of someone. Monday morning, Hazel wasn't there. Franklin stood at the empty curb, paper bag in hand, scanning the sidewalk. Her cardboard was gone. Her blanket. Everything. He waited through 2 buses. Asked the shop owner across the street. Got a shrug. Day 2, panic set in. What if she's hurt? The guilt felt like a stone in his chest. He searched nearby alleys, checked under stoops. Found scuff marks near the curb where she'd slept. Fresh. Violent. He thought about calling someone, police, shelters, but stopped. They'd treat her like trash, not a person. Wednesday evening, Hazel returned. Shaken. Pale. Quieter than he'd ever seen her. Where were you? She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a sealed envelope into his hands. Do not open this unless the man with expensive shoes comes. Franklin stared at it. What man? If he comes, Hazel whispered, you stand close. You don't let them talk over me. Be honest. What would you do right here? Would you call the police? Or keep searching quietly so you don't make things worse? Comment your answer, because when Hazel comes back, she leaves Franklin with something that scares her more than hunger. Over the next week, Hazel's health deteriorated. Coughing fits that bent her double. Dizziness that made her sway even sitting down. Friday morning, Franklin found her slumped against the wall, lips pale, breathing shallow. He dropped the bag. Hazel. Bystanders slowed but didn't stop. One pulled out a phone, to film, not to help. Call 911. Franklin shouted at a passing businessman. The man hesitated, then finally dialed. Franklin knelt beside her, refusing to leave. Her hand found his, cold and trembling. The house, she whispered, barely audible. The papers, the truth in that envelope. Don't talk. Help's coming. Promise me, you'll stand close. I promise. Paramedics arrived. Franklin watched them lift her onto a stretcher, her body fragile, her eyes still sharp. As the ambulance pulled away, Franklin stood alone on the empty sidewalk. The sealed envelope felt like a bomb in his pocket. If you've made it this far, don't look away now. Because the next person who shows up isn't coming to help. He's coming to erase. Back to the present. The black luxury car idled at the curb. Security personnel spread across the sidewalk, scanning the block like they owned it. Donald Turner stepped out, his polished shoes hitting the cracked pavement with authority. His gaze swept the street, then locked on Hazel's empty spot. Where is Hazel Moore? His voice was controlled, smooth. Franklin stepped forward, blocking the space subtly. Why do you need her? Turner's smile was cold. The woman is confused. Unstable. Not a reliable witness to anything. I've been here every day for 6 months, Franklin said quietly. She's sharper than you think. Movement behind them. Hazel appeared from around the corner, walking slowly, her red jacket pulled tight. The tension shifted. People stopped. Watched. Turner's eyes flicked to Franklin's hand, to the envelope he was gripping tightly. For 1 second, Turner's calm mask cracked. Fear. Then it was gone. Turner's voice hardened. Give me that envelope, son. Franklin didn't move. Instead, he handed it to Mrs. Chun, the community center director who'd just arrived. Can you open this? Mrs. Chun broke the seal. Inside, a deed copy, a faded photograph of a blue door with brass number 7, and a signed agreement dated 2018. 1847, Ashland Avenue. Mrs. Chun read aloud. Owner, Hazel Moore. The crowd went silent. Hazel stepped forward, voice steady. That was my home. He bought the block. Told me my deed was invalid. Made me sign papers I didn't understand. She was confused. Turner started. I wasn't confused, Hazel said quietly. I was alone. Turner lunged for the envelope. Franklin pulled back. Phones came out. People recorded. Turner's jaw tightened. He straightened his tie. Let me help you, Mrs. Moore, he said smoothly. Proper housing. Medical care. We can resolve this privately. Turner's voice softened, calculated. I'll relocate you to a proper facility. Cash settlement. Full medical care. We'll handle everything, quietly. Hazel's eyes stayed steady. I needed help before you were afraid. Mrs. Moore, be reasonable. No. Franklin stepped beside her. You don't get to buy this. Turner's expression hardened. Son, you're involving yourself in matters you don't understand. This could complicate things for your family. The threat hung in the air. The crowd pressed closer. People who'd walked past Hazel for months now stood watching, phones raised, faces tight with recognition of their own complicity. A woman pushed through, legal aid badge visible. Mr. Turner, I'm documenting this conversation. A community reporter arrived, camera rolling. Turner looked around. Witnesses everywhere. Recordings multiplying. His control was slipping. He couldn't contain this anymore. And he knew it. The investigation took 3 weeks. Property records were pulled. Signatures examined. Turner Development's acquisition of 1847 Ashland was placed under legal hold. The media attention was relentless, but not clean. Some outlets called Hazel lucky. Others questioned why she hadn't fought sooner. Franklin learned that even when truth surfaces, people still blame the powerless for their own erasure. But consequences came. Slowly. Structurally. Hazel was placed in transitional housing, not a shelter, but a small apartment with heat and running water. Medical care was arranged through legal aid. Her deed was under review for restoration. Franklin's life changed too, but not through magic. A community fund raised money for his grandmother's utilities. A local college offered him tutoring support and a future scholarship pathway. Not because he was a hero, but because people finally saw him. One afternoon, Franklin visited Hazel's new apartment. It was small, sparse, but warm. She made him tea. People keep calling me brave, Franklin said. Hazel shook her head. Kindness didn't save me. Consistency did. He looked at her. You saved yourself. I just didn't walk away. That's what I mean, she said softly. You stayed long enough for the truth to matter. The story didn't end with applause. There was no viral moment of redemption. Turner's lawyers were still fighting. Hazel's health was still fragile. Franklin still worked early mornings to help his grandmother. But something had shifted. Hazel Moore was no longer invisible. And Franklin Cross understood something most people never learned. Power doesn't collapse from one moment of courage. It collapses when someone refuses to let truth be erased. One breakfast, one morning, one witness at a time. The story wasn't about a billionaire arriving. It was about a boy who stood close when everyone else looked away. And sometimes, that's all truth needs to survive. Now tell me, should Franklin have opened the envelope immediately, Or did he do the right thing by waiting until the truth had witnesses? Drop your opinion in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Another powerful story drops tomorrow, same time.